Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joe. I'm the digital astronomer, and I want to thank you for taking time to watch this video today. Today we're going to look at one of my favorite objects in the night sky, the moon. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take a bunch of pictures that I've taken over the last year, and we're going to take a tour of the lunar surface. I hope you'll stick around. So what I have up here right now is a picture that I recently took. I think this was taken on June 1st of a nearly full moon. You can see it was a waxing gibbous moon, almost full. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit. What I want to do over the course of this video is just sort of take you on a quick tour. We're going to start up here in the Mare of Imbrium and work our way around through the Mare of the Sea of Serenity, Sea of Tranquility. We're going to look at some of the major features. I'm going to point out a few Apollo landing sites here, a few of the major craters, and work our way all the way down through the southern region and look at Tycho. And so let's get started. Let's go up here and focus in our attention on this region here known as the Mare of Imbrium, or the Sea of Imbrium. Okay, we're going to focus in on this northern portion of the lunar surface right here for the next couple of moments. This is known as the Sea of Imbrium. And you can see I'm photographing this particular image right along the terminator. So you can barely see this little feature up here. This little arch is known as the Sinus Imbrium. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you a little bit better picture of that. This I caught last year. And I actually took this image with a Celestron 6 SCT. But here you can clearly see this area here. This is the Sinus Imbrium. And this is sort of a bay that has been surrounded by mountains. It was formed when through the remains of a large impact crater that filled in with lava. And so you can see this is an area that's relatively flat. There's a few small wrinkle ridges along here. A few tiny craters, but really not very many. And so this is a very outstanding feature. If you look at this even in a set of binoculars, this is a really neat area. And these wrinkle ridges that go down along here, we're going to see other examples of this in other places of the moon. But these are tectonic features that were created by cooling lava that was left over, and they look almost like veins running under the lunar surface. And I'll show you another example or two of these in a little while, but just to give you a kind of an idea here of the length of these, this little feature up here is known, it's a little set of mountains called the Montes Recti, or Straight Range. This is about 90 kilometers long. So you can see that these wrinkle ridges are a little longer than that in some cases, but 90 kilometers, that's about 56 miles, somewhere in that length. This mountain range here is about 20 kilometers wide. And it's also 1.8 kilometers high. That means these mountains are just over 1 mile tall. And of course, these are not the tallest mountains on the moon by any means, but I just want to give you an idea of sort of the scale that you are looking at. Moving on a little further over to the right, we see the crater Plato, which is about 100 kilometers in diameter. And it's a very smooth floor with no central peak whatsoever. Let me pull another picture in here. This is a little closer up view of the crater Plato, a little bit different view. And I've kind of focused in on it just a little bit more. I'll tell you about this feature in a couple of moments. But this is the crater Plato, and it's a very interesting, I think because it's so flat, it really catches your attention, especially when you look at it, right alongside of this just beautiful area up here. And so this is one of my favorite areas of the moon to kind of take a look at. And you can easily see these in binoculars. Very, very easy to find. Let's move on. If I come back here to our wider picture and I zoom in just a little bit, one of the most prominent features on the lunar surface is this range of mountains. There's actually two mountain ranges here that run down along this area right here. I'm going to show you a closer picture of these. These are the Caucasus and the Apennines Mountains. And I might be saying these things wrong. My Latin is horrendous. But right here, we're focusing sort of on the northern area, the Caucasus Mountains right through here. Very quickly, we can see a couple neat things here that I'll point out to you. First of all, up here, this little crater right here is Cassini. Down along, if we move down a little bit farther, this is Aristillus, and this is Archimedes. In fact, Archimedes and Aristillus are two of those craters that if you're learning anything about lunar astronomy and you're wanting to kind of navigate, these are two very, very helpful craters to help you kind of locate where you're at. This ray system, you see these white lines that are coming out of the crater Aristillus? These are known as rays. That's the ejecta that is blown out when the asteroid that hit the lunar surface and made this particular crater. The dust and debris that was blown out forms this ray system. And these rays go out about 600 kilometers. You'll also notice at the center of this particular crater is a couple of peaks. There are actually three clustered peaks right here in the center of this particular crater. And you'll notice some craters have those and some don't. Here, if you look at Archimedes, it doesn't have a central peak. It has been filled in by lava. Now, just over to the side here, just to the south and fairly near Archimedes, over in this region here, this is where the Apollo 15 landing site was, right in this region right here. And so anyways, that's kind of a neat little thing, a fun thing to do. I'll point out a couple other Apollo sites, but there's a little rill that runs along in this area called the Hadley Rill, and that's where the Apollo 15 landed. Up along here, I told you I'd come back and tell you about this valley. This valley is known as the Valles Alpes. It is 166 kilometers wide, and it's basically long rather, and it reaches out to 30 to 50 kilometers wide at its widest points right through here. But it's just a valley that runs down through here, but is a very prominent marker on the moon. And this isn't the best image of it, but you get kind of a feel for just the amazing variety of topography that's on the moon. So let's go over and let's take a look now and go a little further and take a look at two of my favorite craters, Copernicus and Eratosthenes. Okay, I've gone back out to our wider picture. I want to orient you to where we're going next. We have looked up here at this mountain range and our crater system here. We're going to come down now to this region here. This is the crater Eratosthenes, I cannot say that for my life, and Copernicus. And let me bring in a little closer up picture that I've taken. This is the crater Copernicus. This is this crater here. That's this crater that I'm focused in on a little closer. And then this is the crater Kepler, which you can't see in my wider picture, but this is Kepler. One of the things I want you to notice here about Copernicus is that, of course, this was named after the the astronomer, Nicholas Copernicus, and it features a ray system. And this is probably one of the most prominent ray systems on the entire lunar surface. I guess the only one that I think really would rival it would be the ray system down at Tycho in the southern portion of the moon, which we'll look at in a little bit. But you can see this goes out, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away. And some of the very high resolution images of Kepler even show that inside of the crater there has been some landslides. This is a very well studied system. Now, this isn't a great picture. This is a little closer up view. This is Copernicus right here. And you can see there are 3 peaks in the center. And some better images of this will even show there have been landslides here. You'll see some of the smaller trail of small craterlets that have been made when this was probably formed. This was some of the ejecta that fell out of that. But this is a rather interesting area of the moon. And Kepler over here, much smaller, but again, a very interesting, very prominent ray system. And this has just been created by the dust that was thrown out when that was created. All right, well, let's move on over now to the Mare of Serenity, the Sea of Serenity. Okay, we've been over here looking at Copernicus and even going out and looking at Kepler a little further out. Now we're going to come back to this region right here. This is the Sea of Serenity, the Mare of Serenity. And I'm going to focus in our attention right up on this area here. I'm going to bring in a little closer up picture. And let me blow this up just a little bit so you can see it. And this is a rather interesting area. This crater right here is Apollo 7, or is near where Apollo 17 landed, and this is the crater Poseidonus. And what's kind of interesting about this is you see sort of this rim within a rim. You also see that some craters have landed along the rim of this other crater. The other thing you notice is this Y-shaped feature, the kind of serpentine feature that runs down along through here. This is known as the Dorsa Smirnov. It is a 222 kilometer long wrinkle ridge. And this is one of the more prominent. In fact, I think when I started looking at the moon through telescope and imaging it, this was one of the first wrinkle ridges that I really ever noticed. And so you'll see another one that goes down along here. Almost always wrinkle ridges are associated with various craters. And so you can kind of see that region right down through here. And I think this is a rather fascinating area right there along the eastern side of the Sea of Serenity. So now let's move on down to everyone's favorite, the Sea of Tranquility. Down here in this region, if we just go a little bit south and east of the Sea of Serenity, this is the Sea of Tranquility. And let me go into a little closer up view of this. I've got several things I want to show you from this in this region. This is the Sea of Tranquility right here. This is the Sea of Chrysium, or the Mare Chrysium, right over here. And this is the Sea of Facundus, right down in here. Now, why we pay so much attention to this area is if we were to come right down in this region here, this is where the first moon landing took place, the Apollo 11 landing. And I actually have a couple of interesting pictures that I want to show you of that area. First of all, let me bring up a wide view of this region. This is not the best picture. I'm very badly overexposed over in this area. But last summer, during the 50th anniversary, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the landing of Apollo 11, I spent a lot of time in here. Okay, so here's the Sea of Tranquility. Here are the two craters, Ritter and Sabine. Now, to kind of point those out real quick so you can find them on here, on the larger picture, this is Ritter, this is Sabine. You'll see them up here, Ritter and Sabine. That's where we're looking at on the larger picture, okay? And then if we come down, we also have this little area here, the Sinus Aspiratus, and which is kind of neat. It's a crater, and it's been badly defected by another crater. Here we have where the Apollo 11 landing took place, right here. And the way you can find that, of course, is to find Sabine. And then let me draw this in. This is an even closer up view. This is Sabine right here. There are 3 small craters named after the 3 astronauts, Aldrin, Collins, and Armstrong. This small, if you find Sabine A, you can come out here and find this smaller crater, Sabine C. It sort of forms a triangle with Aldrin and Collins. Then if you follow that line, go Aldrin's, Sabine C, suddenly you'll find this little feature here called the cat's claw, and Tranquility base is just basically right off of that cat's claw. And so that's the way you can find it. But that's the area around the Sea of Tranquility, and probably one of the most fascinating areas. I want to go back one of these days and try to image this even better and more clearly. There are lots of guys that did this last year. It was a lot of fun, but that's the Apollo 11 landing site. All right, so now let's move on to our next region of the moon here on our quick tour. So we've looked here at the Sea of Tranquility. Now I want to move down into this area here, which is known as the Mare Taurus. And we're going to look right around this area here. Now this doesn't come out really great on this kind of image where you're shooting near a full moon and things wash out. But I want to focus in on this little crater right here that you can barely see in this picture. But if I pull in the close-up image and blow it up just a little bit here, you will see this same area. Here is the region called Mare Taurus. Here is this very prominent and very popular to photograph crater, Theophilus. And you'll notice here it has some very large peaks in the center. It even has a crater right here along the wall. It's been smacked by another, smaller asteroid and made a crater here. This is the crater Fracturus. Here are good examples. This is a crater that's been filled with lava. This is one that has not, and that still has its central peaks. Over in this area, the Apollo 16 mission landed over in this region here. And, of course, the astronauts there were John Young and Charlie Duke and Ken Mattingly. Ken Mattingly was supposed to fly on Apollo 13, but, of course, had the measles or was exposed to the measles and couldn't go. But John Young is an astronaut that often gets forgotten today, but he had the longest career of any astronaut. He flew on 6 different space missions on 4 different types of vehicles, which is amazing, including he was the commander of STS-1, the first flight of the space shuttle. And so I wanted to mention that. But this is a rather interesting area here around Mare Taurus. Let's move on. Okay, we're down here on the southern portion of the moon now. I want to focus in here on this region where this is around the area of the Mare Nubium. Specifically, I want to take a look at this line of craters that go down along here, and a feature that I want to point out that's only visible a couple of days a month right along in here. I'm going to bring in another picture. Let me make it a little bit larger. This is a close-up of that same section taken on a different time. Here you see the crater Ptolemaeus, and here is a line of craters that go down along. Now, the southern portion of the moon is just pockmarked with all kinds of craters, which you'll see here in just a couple of minutes. But over here in the Mare of Nubium, you will see this little line that goes down through here. This is a 110-kilometer long fault line or straight cliff. And what makes it interesting is that the sun only hits this just right a couple of times a month, or a couple of days a month, so that it can be viewed. This is known as the Rubis Recta. It's a rather interesting feature, and I like to point it out because it is something that most lunar photographers want to try to capture, but it's only there for a short period of time each month, and so you have to catch it. But it's a rather interesting feature. The other thing that I want to bring out your attention to is to start focusing here on this area around the crater Tycho, which is probably the most prominent crater on the entire lunar surface. Let's take a little bit closer. Okay, the most prominent feature on the southern portion of the moon is obviously the crater Tycho. This is the easiest crater to see because it has this massive amount of lunar rays that come out from it. You just can't miss Tycho. If I zoom back out of there just a little bit, you know, it's the most prominent feature in the southern area of the moon. If we focus in there a little bit, it is a rather interesting crater. You'll notice that, first of all, it's relatively deep. It's about 4,800 meters deep. It's about 85 kilometers around. Certainly not the largest crater on the lunar surface, but so bright, and it gets illuminated so brightly that you just can't help but to miss it. So everybody notices this. It also has a very prominent central peak here. These are very easy to pick up even with binoculars. You can see that, and a rather interesting area. I want to show you a picture real quick. This is I will show you two more pictures actually. This is a little bit over sharpened picture of the area. I don't like this one as much, but it kind of shows you the rays and just how far out and away these rays are carried. These are hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away from the central portion of the crater Tycho. But there's one other picture that I want to show you. This was taken by the lunar orbiter, reconnaissance orbiter. The mountain you're looking at here is this central peak. This is a super zoomed in version. And notice what's sitting on top of it. There's a rock that is sitting there on top of this peak right at the center of Tycho. And this shows you a couple of different things. It shows you, first of all, that this rock was thrown here either when this crater was created, you know, flew up into the lunar sky and then fell back down, or it came from one of the other ejections around it when another, you know, asteroid hit the lunar surface and it landed it here. I thought that was pretty neat. The other thing this shows you is just how rugged these mountain peaks are. These are very, very, very rugged mountains. All right, I want to thank you for sticking with me. This is a little longer video than I normally try to do, but I hope you enjoyed it and that this gave you a good introduction to our nearest neighbor in the night sky, and that it inspired you to get out and take a look at the moon. Please do me a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please click on subscribe, like, and then share it with your friends to help me build my channel. Thank you for tuning in today.